Hello and welcome to episode 370 already of Scarves Around the Funnel, the podcast dedicated to Heart of Midlothian Football Club. Now 5 points clear at the Scottish Premiership Summit. My name is Mark Donaldson, alongside a man who still has Derek McInnes locked in that cupboard where you can just see that key if you're watching on YouTube. It's Mr. Scott McIntosh, who right now has the same face as he did after a final whistle on Saturday evening, Hearts clinching a 3-0 win at Kilmarnock. Are you allowed to be happy?
I was really happy. I was just taking it all in at that precise moment that Premier Sports caught me on camera. So yes, it was good to have a little laugh at that on the way back home in the car. I've still got the key there. It's not Derek in there this time though. It's Charlie Mulgrew. I'm trying to save everyone from him. I can't be bored listening to him. For a guy who managed, what was it, Kelly Hearts for 11 games, and I think one of them was a 6-0 spanking against somebody. He's got a lot to say. And you know what? It reminds me, I'm sorry, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but it really
You're
annoyed me what he
okay.
said. Just, it wasn't so much what he said, it was the timing of it. He didn't even allow other people to even get across the point that fans were lapping it up, the team were lapping it up. It's like he couldn't wait to say it's not going to last. And it reminds me of Callum Davidson
Oh,
when we were
goodness.
fighting with Rangers for the championship in 2014-15. There was a sports eating programme. Obviously, they were covering a lot of championship games at that time because we were down there with Hibs. And Cam Davidson was asked round about October, November time. Hearts were a few points ahead of Rangers by this stage because Rangers has had a bit of a shocking start and we were undefeated. And he kept on saying the word pressure for about 5 minutes. That's all he could say. And it just reminded me of that it's just going back to old trends and old habits because your eyes are telling you something, but you don't want to believe your eyes. You just want to use that comfort blanket of Celtic always come back and do something. So yeah, he's a fucking idiot.
Wow. Not what I was expecting.
Sorry, had to get that negativity out
It,
there
it,
before we
it's
discuss all the
it's
good.
okay. It's okay. Before we get to everything else that I had planned, let's continue on that tangent. And this is your platform right now. I'll be Nick Hancock. This can be room 101. If you're putting Charlie Mulgrew in that closet behind you, I suppose you're putting Michael Stewart in there as well. Anybody else
No,
that... Oh, what?
no, I probably wouldn't just now. The Charlie Mulgrew thing annoyed me because of the timing of the comment. It's completely fine to think that Hearts will not
Oh.
maintain this runny form. There'll be plenty of Hearts fans that'll be thinking this just now. It was just the time. It was as if he couldn't help. Now you've got to remember he's currently being in now he's freelance, but he's currently being employed at that very moment by Premier Sports. Premier Sports' job at that point is to market and promote the Scottish game. They should be bending over backwards to talk up this league challenge, just like everyone else should just now in the Scottish media, because this should be to the betterment of the game. If there's a challenger, even if it's just a challenge without somebody winning it at the end of the season, it's still something to talk about compared to the usual back and forth between Celtic and Rangers, which hasn't even been a back and forth for the last 13, 14 years as well. I just don't understand why these broadcasters continuously hire people like that are not talking the game up and just can't wait to let their own agenda and their own sort of bias get in the way of actually talking a team up. It was the timing of it that annoyed me more than anything. Completely fine with people thinking that we can't maintain this form because history would point you in that direction. But you know, it was literally right at the end of the game, right after it, and it was the first thing he could say. No praising the team for how they played. You know, nobody else has been at Kilmarnock recently and won 3-0 there and made it look that easy, especially in the second half. He just couldn't wait. And it just really annoys me about characters like him that constantly get gigs, they constantly get paid, they do very little research pre-game. They know very little about the teams that they're talking about, unless it's Celtic or Rangers as well. That's another thing that pisses me off.
You done?
But we'll stop at that.
Okay. You know he's pissed a lot of people off when he gets his own topic on Campbell's kickback about what he said. I wasn't even expecting to go down this road. It's a better tangent than it was from me. It was a dreadful tangent in episode 315, because that's the one I was listening to. So that was a year ago.
Mm.
Laurie called it the Derek Knight Rises. And it was on the back of a 3-2 defeat at Pittodrie, where we played all right. In fact, you said, as good a Hearts performance as I've seen since the opening day of the season. Now, the standard wasn't great. Hearts were bottom of the table after that 3-2 defeat. They started off with a 0-0 draw against Rangers. Then things kind of went downhill. This is a year ago, up until game number 8, which is the same number as we've played. They lost 3-1 at Dundee. Gerard Taylor went from Pelly to Smelly. Motherwell 3, Hearts 1 was game 3. Dundee United came to Tynecastle and won by a goal to nil in game 4. Celtic 2-0, Celtic Park beating Hearts in game 5. A 2-1 defeat at St Mirren was Stephen Naismith's last in charge. Liam Fox came in. His first 2 league games were 1-1 against Ross County and then that Aberdeen game, which came just a few days after a victory in Azerbaijan against Minsk. So Hearts started last season with 8 games played, well, 3 draws against. No, it was Naismith only got 1 draw, didn't he? Yeah,
Yeah.
he did. So just 2 draws, and the rest were defeats. This time, 2-0 over Aberdeen, 3-2 at Dundee United, 3-3 against Motherwell, having been 3-0 down, 2-1 against Livingston, 2-1 at Rangers, 3-0, sorry, 2-0 at Rangers, 3-0 against Falkirk, 1-0 against Hibs, and Saturday's 3-0 win over Kilmarnock. That will be the main topic today. We will get to that shortly. Plenty more things to talk about, including what's the most excited you have been ahead of a game at Tynecastle. That's ahead of the game against Celtic. And I haven't told Scott yet this, but we're going to go over the games that we've played so far individually. And although Hearts are top of the table, 5 points clear, is it a case of being more solid than spectacular? Scott and I can go through those games still to come on Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. Okay, Saturday, 5:45 p.m. kickoff. I was listening to the boys on This Is My Story, and they seem to love this kickoff time. We're discussing, would you rather have a Friday at 7:45 or would you rather have a Saturday at 5:45? And it was kind of unanimous. Good day out. Kilmarnock away. Apparently only 1 train after the game heading back to Edinburgh or heading up from Kilmarnock to Glasgow. Derek McInnes, good little nugget from Laurie Dunsire in commentaries, only lost 1 of his last 30 top flight matches against Kilmarnock, unbeaten in 16 away games at Rugby Park for an opposition side since a 3-2 defeat when St Johnstone manager in February 2010. He went there 15 times with Aberdeen, won 13 of them, and drew the other 2. It's always wary when we speak about that before Hearts go to Kilmarnock with Derek McInnes in charge, but it turned out all right. Team news, unchanged. Simple from McInnes. This one, I know we spoke about potential changes last week, but it wasn't really a surprise, was it, when we saw the lineup? And it was exactly the same 11.
Yeah. I think in terms of the lineup, it was pretty much the same. There's minor tweaks to how we're playing and how certain players are approaching matches game by game. But in terms of the 11, it pretty much picks itself just now. Again, that might have to get tweaked again next week, depending on what Celtic do. That might be a fixture that we have to react to. I've got a funny feeling Celtic are going to switch their system in the next week. There's a lot of chat about Celtic potentially switching to a free, just due to Rodgers trying to find some sort of key combination to sort of unlock his attacking talent in the final third. So there is talk about them making some changes. So it'll be interesting to see what we do coming up for Sunday. But in terms of Saturday's match, just good to see those relationships building again between pairs, and that's naturally helped us, keep this consistency, not just in terms of being efficient in front of goal, but also keeping that 4th clean sheet in a row as well.
It was a start to the game that was a little bit sluggish. It took Hearts a bit of time before they kind of got their foot on the ball. Obviously, we were speaking last week about the way that Killie play, and they kind of allow the opposition to have more of the ball, and they're happy doing that, and they can send it long if they want to Dackers, who's absolutely massive. I think the boys on This Is My Story basically called him a Killie Kevin James, and that he's tall but not much else. So the start to the game before the goal, What did you make of the way that Hearts came out of the blocks in this one?
It was pretty much as I'd expected. I wasn't expecting us to really come out the traps flying. I knew that the first half would be a case of winning your second balls, trying to get a grip on the match as best as you possibly can. And like I said, maybe try to nick something for a set play, which is what we've
Hmm.
done. I think just now with the makeup of the team, certain individuals who are match winners for us, I think you see them coming to life when the game becomes more stretched. And I think if we can get the opening goal in these fixtures, then you'll see the likes of Braga and Kazaridas especially continue to flourish once they get a bit more space in between the centre halves and fullbacks, or maybe even beyond the centre halves if they decide to push up a little bit more and be a bit more aggressive in the second half, like Kilmarnock were being. You could see that Kilmarnock line. Even just pushing up an extra sort of 5 yards in the second half, it just gives Hearts that little bit more room to sort of run in behind and just sort of open the game up a little bit more. But more important than that was probably the role that certain players played in the first half. I would say that Halkett and Finlay done their jobs well. I think Halkett at times in the first 10 minutes was engaging with Dackers a bit too much. But I think what he discovered pretty quickly, and I think the spectators were discovering it as well, is that if you actually stand off a big guy like Dackers and let him have that first touch,
Yeah.
he's inevitably going to allow you to nick in ahead of him anyway. There's no point getting involved in the physical battle with him. You're probably better just letting him take that first touch because he's not the type of player that's going to take a touch, swivel, and beat you or sort of, knock it into the top corner for 15, 20 yards out. So you could see that Halkett and Finlay knew how to play Anderson and Dackers after the opening 15 minutes. And Beningame and Devlin, as the game just, wore on and on, just became more and more influential. So those four had a huge part to play in that first half, in particular, before the match winners got involved in the second half.
Yeah, I watched the game back earlier today and I was really impressed. We'll get on to this. I was really impressed by where we pressed because one man press is never going to work in football because you can play around that, but you can hunt in packs. And whether it was McEntee coming forward from the right back area, whether it was Devlin there, even Claudio Braga getting back and helping, Lawrence Shankland in that role as well, really impressed by the work rate of Hearts. But that's obviously plenty that we can talk about as the game wears on. The opening goal comes in the 19th minute, and I think Hearts' threat from a set play was kind of summed up after the game by Stuart Kettlewell, the Kilmarnock boss, who said they did extra work on defending set plays because they know how good Hearts can be. Maybe they switched off at a point because I don't know what they're doing defensively. It's a brilliant delivery from Milne. Halkett scores a really good header, but defensively they were nowhere.
Yeah.
It's a great opening goal, but you take it.
Yeah, I think to be fair to Kettlewell, I think you can work on things as much as you want Monday to Friday, and I think from a structural sense, they were fine. Even at that
Hmm.
set play, they were set up perfectly fine. I think the problem comes with Robbie D's just misjudging the flight of the ball and getting under it,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. That's must be the most frustrating thing for any coach, head coach, manager in the game is that you can't legislate for individual errors and people not concentrating. And especially, to be fair to Kilmarnock, it's a part of their game that they have been strong at this season. You won't see too many teams score for set plays against them. But it was still a great ball, even although Dees sort of misjudges it. And Halkett, just a brilliant header. He just attacks it so aggressively. And we know he's capable of doing that. But with the form he's in just now at both ends of the park, it was a great header. Really good goal.
This is a fixture the last 10 meetings. There's not been more than a goal in any of them. And you kind of thought the first goal, given how tight it's been over the last, what, maybe 3, 4 years, that first goal was going to be so important because Killy needed something to defend. They're not a great side when it comes to chasing. They've beaten St Mirren recently, went a goal up, did well defensively, and then managed to get a second goal. So to go a goal down, from a Hearts perspective, going a goal up at Kilmarnock, against this Kilmarnock, I felt pretty comfortable for the rest of that. I don't think we played great in the first half. I thought we were much better in the second half. But some games you go a goal up and you're like, all right, you just know it's coming. It's when, not if, the opposition kind of get back into the game. But I thought we had them at arm's length for long chunks in this game.
Yeah, I would agree. And look, Kilmarnock approached the game pretty much how I was expecting them to.
Yeah,
It was pretty similar to Hibs setup, not just in terms of formation, but in terms of what they were asking their central midfielders to do. So what Kiltie and Watson were doing were basically trying to limit the space to our fullbacks to obviously stop us from being able to get the ball, directly out to the likes of Kizadidis or Milne, and try to forcing us to try and go through the middle of the game or even sort of knock it long instead. So there was a lot of that going on in the first half, and it was just a case of us trying to be patient, and we were. But I was like you, I wasn't. Once we got that first goal, although you're always wanting to get a second goal to give you that sort of level of comfort going
sure.
into the second half. I felt fairly confident at half time because I knew that not only with the 11 we had on the park, I knew with the options we had on the bench, once that game became stretched, I knew we could go on to score another goal or two. And that's the thing, I probably didn't expect the game to stretch that early on in the second half. I thought it might have been after maybe 60, 65 minutes. But once it did, there was only ever going to be one winner.
Yeah.
And like you say, that pressing in terms of that pack mentality, even when we were 3-0 up, that didn't let up. They were really good with that. And again, everyone's talking about Schwalov in terms of the fact that he's now played 4 games, and
He's not
no
had
one's
much to
still
do,
quite
has
sure if
he?
he's actually any good or not. But the reason for that wouldn't be possible with just a good defensive setup from the back four. That comes from the forward line all the way back to the
Yeah.
rest of the team, and everyone is doing their job. Everyone is. Milne and McAtee dovetailed quite well at times. You could tell that they were both quite wary of what Kilmarnock could do down the left hand flank, and that's something that'll be pretty interesting on Sunday because if you watch the Celtic Dundee game, everything Celtic tried to do was down the left hand side because they're having to play Ralston and Yang down the right
Yeah.
just now, and there's clearly no trust from Rodgers in those two individuals. They're playing there out of necessity rather than the fact that Rodgers sees them as first team picks. So I'd imagine Milne and McAtee, if they play again, the same formation, that'll be something they'll probably ask them to do again is dovetail and make sure that they're covering
Mm.
for Tynecastle down that left-hand side. But that's the thing, everyone's supporting one another. They're playing well in pairs, whether it's the centre halves, the centre mids, or even, second half, the forward players linking up because Adidas was getting a lot closer to the front too. Everything just clicked. And again, it's not people could watch our performances just now and they could maybe nitpick and say, well, it's not perfect and it's not this and it's not that, but it's really efficient. And from a defensive standpoint, it is really impressive what we are doing just now. I think that's a very underrated aspect of the team. And that goes back to the start of the season. I think we've always been very well set up defensively under Derek McInnes since he's came in. I know there were some individual errors at the start of the season. If you look at some of the goals we lost, whether it was Frankie Kent and Alan Forrest at Tannadice, Xander Clark at Tannadice, Stuart Finlay and Xander Clark at Livingston. There is reasons why we've lost goals, but I've never felt it's been done down to any sort of structural sort of choice by the manager or the way that the team have looked to set up. So I do think now that we've managed to get those or iron out those problems, those little individual errors, we look really solid at the back. And because we're doing really well for set plays as well, it's hard to see where teams are actually going to be able to break us down apart from potentially in transition, but not everyone can do that because they don't have the pace to sort of catch us. So uh, this is where I see us building. Although everyone wants to talk about the match winners in the final third, and that's great, they'll always grab the headlines. It's actually that back four just now that's proven the
Yeah.
catalyst to us building on, the opening 3 or 4 games for this season.
Just 6 goals conceded, which is one more than Celtic, but 19 goals scored, which is 8 more than Celtic. And we've got 5 more points. We'll get to the Celtic game later in today's show. I've been trying to find and have now got the quotes from Derek McInnes on Cammy Devlin. And this is to do with the chance, which should be 2-0, just before half
It was a
time.
little bit behind them. I'll give him at the game because it was at the other end. We were all cursing him because we just thought, well, I mean, he does really well to support Braga in the first instance and get in there and get into that position. But at that stage, we didn't realise that the ball had maybe just been laid off just slightly behind him. You can see with his right foot, he's not able to really run onto it and sort of side foot. He's having to kind of have a sort of slice at it. So yeah, I think we'll give him that. to be fair to him. And I suppose looking at it from a positive standpoint, he gets in that position, and that's really heartening to see.
The reason I mention this is because Derek McInnes, there's a really nice sit-down interview he's done with Cy Ferry
Hmm.
in this week's Open Goal, which I watched earlier, and he admits he just loves Cammy Devlin. He says he's miles better than I thought. He says he's been a real driver for us and everything I would have hoped for him. Technically, he deals with balls so well. Maybe he's not got that final pass in him at times. He's not got that end product with goals and whatever, but there are enough of the rest of the team who have got that. So, my favourite thing about Cammy Devlin, and I know it was only a cameo, he got to wear the captain's armband and Captain Heart of Midlothian. And that made me happy, and I think it made a lot of other people happy as well near the end.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think it's been good to see Cammy, Benny, Lauren Shankland. I think you're now seeing where the team were going wrong in previous seasons and how they were victims of the fact that we didn't have that pace and athleticism in the final third that we were really
Hmm.
needing. And a lot was being asked of those players to try and play out of their own comfort zones. So, Stephen Naismith was trying to, create Cammy Devlin or recreate him into this sort of number 10 or number 8 that could go
Yeah.
box to box and sort of link the game. There was a lot of times last season where there was a lot of criticism from all sides towards the likes of Benny and that for maybe not progressing the ball, but you can actually see that when there is options in front of them that they are capable of doing it. I still think that the midfield need a ball carrier. And I
Yes.
think that's naturally something that I think
Yeah.
that's why he's been brought into the team. I think that's
Hmm.
an element that he's going to be able to offer us, albeit alongside running beyond the front men and offering an option there as well. But they've been really good. Cammy especially. Benny's been good this season, but I'd say this is probably the best running form that Cammy's had for some time now.
Yeah.
And he was excellent. His ball retention is always really good, but it tends to be from a deeper area of the park where you see his ball retention at its best. Whereas I thought at times in the second half on Saturday, he was actually linking with other players really well, and he was very calm and composed on the ball, which you don't always see from him in that final third. But it was great to see it. It's a shame we haven't seen maybe a little goal for him or Benny just as a little reward. I think for Benny's part, he'll never shoot, so I don't know how
No.
he'll need to tackle it into the net like he did a couple of times in his first season. There was a time at 3-0 where you're just thinking, just have a pop, you're 20
Yes, I
yards
remember.
out. If you're going to do it now. But yeah, it's been really good to see those players enjoy this season because naturally, they were all part of a setup which had been struggling for quite a while last year, and they were obviously part of the criticism that was being flung at the team. But when you see them alongside the likes of Braga and Kizadidis, Finlay coming in, McAtee, you can actually see that if they have the right mix in with them, they can really contribute to the team.
Just staying with Cammy Devlin before we get into the second half and goals 2 and 3. He's booked after 42 minutes for a foul. Now, he's received a lot of yellow cards in his Hearts career, but
He's
then
unfortunate with
some,
that one as well, I thought.
yeah, a little bit. But he's just got some sort of inward discipline that he knows, right, I'm on a yellow. And it doesn't really curtail his game too much. But there were a couple of incidents in the second half. One, it's not a caution or anything like that. He kind of is. He goes for the ball with Kilty and ends up on the deck. Kilty kind of comes up and over the top of him. And it starts a kind of a bit of a fallout between McInnes and Stuart Kettlewell. But it was another one, and it was at your end later on in the game. Hearts get a free kick, and it is never in a million years should it be a
Is this
free
the one
kick
with
for Hearts.
Watson?
Yes.
Aye.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a foul by Cammy, and I'm thinking, oh God, he's
Yeah,
already on a
I know the one
yellow.
you're
And
talking about.
the referee's like free kick Hearts, and Kelly's like, what? Watson can't believe that he's been done. Um, that's one of those. Cammy has this ability as well to react as if he's the one that's been felled, or he's the one that's suffering a sense of injustice. And then there's that little kind of look as if to say, "We okay now? Can I get up?" But I wouldn't change him. I love what he brings to the football club, and I'm glad you brought up that point about what Naismith was doing last season. Just give him the simple things to do that you know he's good at, and let him get on with it. But when he's on a yellow, I don't think he's seen a a red card in his Hearts career, has he,
Not
Cammy
not two
Devlin?
yellows. He had
Not
a straight
from a
red
set, yeah,
against
but from a second
Rangers.
yellow. Yes,
But
from a
he's never had
second
a
yellow.
second yellow, which is why now there's two ways of looking at it because this is a topic that came up, if not last season, then the year before, because I think he picked up maybe 11 or 12 yellow cards, and Stephen Naismith didn't trust him on a yellow card. There was
Hmm.
quite a few occasions where he'd pick up a yellow and then he'd get taken off straight away. There was one game I remember, I think it was the Hibs game where we were 2-0 up and they pulled us back to 2-all when Alan Forrest scored for us that day at Tynecastle. I vaguely remember Devlin picking up a booking either in that one or in the other derby further on in that season. And within about 2 minutes, Naismith brought him off. And Devlin had been the catalyst to us playing well at the start of that second half. So I do think Naismith had an issue with him picking up bookings because he would get taken off quite a bit then. So it did cause a bit of an argument among some Hearts fans as to, well, does he have the discipline or not? Because managers seem to want to take him off
Well,
and not
Naismith
give
didn't
him the
trust him
chance
enough,
to
did
play
he?
with it. But to
Hmm.
be fair, he's had one red card now. This is his fifth season. Look, the red card was very much valid that he got that day for that tackle against Rangers. It was ridiculous. But yeah, he tends to find his discipline in it. I wouldn't say it takes an edge off his game because he was still part of
No, it
that
doesn't.
that sort of pack mentality that we're hunting down Kilmarnock players in the second half. So it didn't neuter him in any way.
Hmm.
Obviously, you've always got to watch out and make sure that he's not someone that referees enjoy booking or
Yeah.
have their eye on straight away. And I think Cammy Devlin, if you think about how commentators and that talk about Cammy Devlin, they tend to talk about that aggressive part of his game.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of it's done tongue in cheek, if I'm being honest. But I think to referees, that gives him that profile of someone who is always quite close to on the edge for a yellow card with his tackle. So I think you've always got to make sure that there's not that risk of a confirmation bias for referees with that. But to be fair, again, it's not something that's really hindered them up to this point.
10 yellows in his first season in the Premiership, five in his second, plus that red card at Ibrox for GBH. Seven in his third season, that nine booking last season, and two this season for
But
Cammy. So what?
and if he wasn't picking up that many bookings, you would be worried because that is part of his makeup. Part of
Yeah,
his role in the
of
team
course.
is to be that destroyer and to break up play. So if he wasn't getting bookings, I'd be worried that he wasn't being
That's
aggressive
fair.
enough and getting stuck in. So I think 9 to 10 yellow cards for someone in his position, I think that's pretty natural.
I do enjoy as a Hearts supporter when he's on my side how he kind of if he's tackled or whatever, it's like it's the end of the world, and he can be forced to retire because he's suffered such a serious injury, and then it's kind of 30 seconds later he's back on his feet, he's running around, and I wouldn't like him if he was an opponent. He's a I'm not saying he's a Scott Brown, but he's that type of players you love if they play for you, and you hate if you play against them. And it's great that the form that he's in right now. So he had that chance just before half time into the second half, the Devlin and Kilty collision. And it's shortly after that that the ball is played back to, in fact, it's from that. Killy get the drop ball. It's played back to the goalkeeper, Eddie Beach, who's in for his first league start of the season. He sends it out to George Stanger, who takes a dreadful touch. And yeah, you know what happens next. Hearts end up with the second goal from Claudio Braga. Um, just before we talk about this, I just want to rewind a little bit. And it would have been better if I'd done this in chronological order. But 5 minutes into the second half, having watched it again and taken a note this morning, this was the first real Hearts attack after a brutal challenge by Stanger on Claudio Braga. And it's the
Yeah.
first real attack of the second half. So Braga gets the ball on the left-hand side. The thing that pleases me most, it doesn't end up in a chance, but it ends up in a couple of kind of one cross in and then it goes to the right-hand side. When Braga's got the ball initially, there are five players inside the box,
Mm.
five Hearts players that he's got to aim for. So that was just a by the by. That hasn't happened a lot in recent years, so that was good. But the goal, it's one thing a defender making a mistake, but you've still got to capitalize. And we did. What did you like about this goal?
Yeah, I think the two goals we scored in the second half pinpoint the wonderful decision making that we have in our attacking options just now. I think both Braga and Kizididis do really well. Look, Kilmarnock will look at both goals and they'll have a lot to say from a defensive standpoint. Obviously, losing the ball in the first place, I think Beach can do a lot better than parry the ball right towards the penalty spot. I think you've really got to be either pushing it out left or right for that position. So he'll probably not be happy with his role in it either. But Braga follows up like any good forward should. He doesn't just stop once he plays that ball out to Kizididis. And yeah, it just shows you just how lethal we can be on the counter attack. Even although we maybe, again, we're still wanting one or two options. We've still maybe not got the fullback options that we want just now. Centre of midfield still maybe needs another runner in there. But between Braga and Kizididis and then with Shanklin supporting them, we are getting numbers up there. And again, if their decision making's that good, it means that we're quite efficient now. We're not needing countless chances to finish teams off. And that was a real highlight or a real bonus of Saturday.
4 minutes later, Hearts go 3-0 up and the game's out of sight. And Claudio Braga's goal reminded me if he was playing with his pals, another kid in the world, and he's on the beach just playing futsal or whatever, or he's at training, just trying to score the best goal possible with a bit of flick and a bit of trick and doing this and that. It's just it's a goal that's scored by a player that's just full of confidence because a lot of a lot of times players overthink things, and a lot of the time that's when they're not confident and they don't have momentum. Right now, Hearts have got momentum. Hearts players are thriving. Everybody wants a piece of it. I'm not sure that's the kind of thing that a player, not so much Claudio Braga, would even try if you're on a long unbeaten, or sorry, a long run of games like we were last season to begin the campaign. But it was so nonchalant and it was a brilliant goal to watch.
Yeah, it's the type of finish you'd expect to see more in training sessions than you would in a
Yes.
live game. I'm pretty sure it's probably something he's done countless times
Mhm.
on a Monday to Friday during shooting practice and that. But yeah, again, easier to do when you're a couple of goals up and you've probably just scored as well. But again, goes back to that decision making. It goes back to what Kizididis does really well. And that's not the first time Kizididis has done this in a Hearts jersey, where he's had that option where a lot of wide men, young wide men, would take the option of maybe having a dig themselves, especially when you're a couple of goals up. But he waits for the ideal opportunity to just slip it into somebody who's got a better opportunity. And that was really good to see. Again, we get the goal from the press. I know Kilmarnock are struggling, but Kilmarnock are struggling because we are pressing them and we're being
Yes.
that aggressive. And we turned it up a couple of notches in that second half. That's what I liked about the performance. There was a little
Hmm.
bit of everything over the 90 minutes. Yes, I don't think we're a good enough team to just go over and steamroll over a team for 90 minutes. We're just not at that stage. We're a fair bit off that, I would probably say. But what we are doing just now is getting the right blend of 11 players, and we're using all of their different attributes at various points of the game to get us through just now. So first half was about containment, it was about winning second balls, it was about trying to get something from a set play. And then once the game got stretched in the second half, we were confident that we had the players either starting or could come off the bench to sort of add something to the team. So it was the perfect setup. It was in many ways a really good away performance when you consider how good we were defensively and how we limited Kilmarnock to chances. And long may that continue. I think that was one of the best performances we've had this season alongside the Rangers game.
And we'll get to the games that we've played so far and what you've thought of them. I'll get you to give them a grade from A through down to D, if there's any that you wish to do so. We'll do that shortly. But it wasn't just the third goal that elicited the songs. The songs were throughout the afternoon. Maybe there was the additional lubrication of some beer or whatever
Oh,
alcoholic
the
beverage.
ultras looked well intoxicated. I can testify to that. I was only a couple of rows up for them, and fair play to them. They were really good. They were really vocal. They had a couple of new songs to add in, obviously due to the little bit of spice and needle over the
Yeah,
Derek McInnes saga from
yeah.
the end of last season. But they were really good. And what I really loved about Saturday was that's probably the first time I've seen our away end that full 45 minutes prior to a fixture in a good 20 years.
Right?
Like the last time I recall it being like that was probably Tannadice in 2005 when we went there and won 3-0. It was a really nice summer Sunday afternoon, and everyone wanted to go in just to watch the new players train. And you could see that on Saturday. Everyone wanted to watch Kizarides in the shooting drills because some of his finishes were brilliant. Everyone wanted to watch Swalov. I'll tell you something, Craig Gordon was pissing himself watching Swalov. Swalov just dives about on any ball. He'll just dive on any ball. And you could see even Craig Gordon was sort of smiling at times. Like that was the first time I've seen a Hearts crowd that buoyant, that far before a game. And that shows you the difference between now and even 12 months ago, when your relationship with your team is such that you just want to get in there bang on 3 o'clock and then
Hmm.
leave 5 minutes before the
Yeah.
game. You know that's not a good relationship between the fans and their team. The difference now is people are wanting to get in there half an hour or 45 minutes before a match, and then they're wanting to stay 10, 15 minutes after to make sure that the team get the credit that they deserve for their performance and their effort.
I'm really glad you brought that up because my game on Saturday was in the afternoon, so I was able to watch the first half in the house before going to work and then getting the second half there. And when Premier Sports coverage starts and then Hearts TV coverage starts, you're thinking it might be a 5:30 kickoff because there's so many Hearts fans already in the ground. And it kind of took me back to 05, 06, Tannadice and some of the other away games, Livy away as well. And there's just a different feeling about this season with the relationship, and I'm so happy you brought that up. The relationship between the Hearts support and the Hearts players. A couple of extra songs that were sung. One was nostalgic. Now, the reason it was nostalgic this weekend was the 40th anniversary of my first ever Hearts game against St Mirren in October 1985. So I went to one or two away games that year, but went to all the home games. But when I wasn't going to the away games, I used to watch World of Sport. Now, on World of Sport was the wrestling, and Big Daddy was on. Now, Big Daddy, big rivals with giant haystacks, but he would win more often than he would lose. But his theme song was "We Shall Not Be Moved." And it just kind of took me back, and I heard that, and it's been a long time since I heard Hearts fans singing "We Shall Not Be Moved." And whether or not we did so back in 2018, when we started the podcast on the 1st of October 2018, Hearts won their first 7 games at Hamilton against Celtic, at Kilmarnock versus St Mirren, at Motherwell versus Livingston. Sorry, they drew that. And then against St Johnstone. So they were top of the table until week 13, losing 1-0 at home to Killie after a 5-0 thumping at Celtic. And the wheels started to come off. I think that was probably the last time we started a season in such good form that meant we went top of the table. Because I think did you recall 21-22 season around that time that we were unbeaten to start the season, but we never quite got top of the table.
Yeah, it's quite funny. The two times that Robbie got us promoted from the championship, we sort of came into the following season and really sort of kicked off really well. So the 21-22 season we started with that home win against Celtic. We won through in Paisley. We then drew with Aberdeen, then we won away to Dundee United, and then we drew a couple of games after that. So Celtic and Rangers form was pretty decent at the time as well. Celtic had obviously just brought Postecoglou in, so they were winning and losing games at times at the start of the season, and Rangers had just come off the back of their league win during the COVID year as well. So it didn't really get the same level of attention because there was a few draws in there and that as well, and obviously there wasn't as much attention on us because there was no bloom factor and the stuff to do with Jamestown and that as well. Robbie was also a well recognised figurehead at the club because this was his second spell as manager also. So
Mhm.
it didn't really get the same sort of headlines as this current form is. But it was a decent start to the season, as was 14-15. I think we won our first 5 games that season. Sorry, 15-16, I should say, after the championship win in 2015. I think we won our first 5 games under Robbie. And then the wheels came off that home game against
Mm,
Aberdeen where we were 3-0
yeah.
down at half time. We never really recovered properly after that one in terms of sticking close to the top 2 teams in the league that season. But 18-19, it's just got such a different vibe to it that time. I do
Totally.
recall us singing we shall not be moved, leaving Fir Park after the fifth game when we won
Okay.
1-0. Maybe got sang
Okay.
once or twice, but it wasn't as ferocious as you were hearing it, or consistent as you've been hearing it over the last couple of weeks. Also, the makeup of the squad, I think we talked about this before. That day when Stephen Naismith pulls up, about 20 minutes into the game at Murrayfield in the League Cup semi-final, and his direct replacement's Danny Amakwa. We have
Hmm.
greater squad depth now than what we did then. Uh, so yeah, I think it's just a completely different story in terms of the makeup of the squad. That squad in 2018-19, even if Uche and Stephen Naismith had kept fit a bit longer, we
We're not
maybe
winning the
wouldn't
league.
have seen the same degree of a tail off that we did, but we were
Yeah.
never going to maintain the position we had either because we struggled for numbers all over the park that year.
Just before we head to the break, there was one other song that Hearts fans were singing with gusto. I shall not attempt the song, but I can't resist the lyrics. I sit alone and watch your light and dream about European nights. And everything we need to know. Our number 10 is Claudio. You remind us of those all time stars and every hero to play for Hearts. You make us laugh, you make us cry, you make us feel like we can fly. You fill us up with so much joy and scoring goals for the Gorgie boys. And so you know, we'll always care and we'll complain when you're not there. You have the pace, you have the power, you're yet to have your finest hour. Claudio, all we need is. Come on. Come on, Claudio Braga. Claudio Braga. Claudio Braga.
Even my voice
Blah,
for
blah, blah.
Sunday.
Claudio, it's true. Gorgie still loves you. You're listening to Scarves Around the Fun, which used to be sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald's Signs until about 5 minutes ago. They've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. Just as well, we don't have outtakes because that was just done on the hoof. But when I'm 3,500 miles away, and I'm hearing this, and I'm hearing "We Shall Not Be Moved" and the songs that you've mentioned as well. It's a family of nearly 4,000 that's there, but there's so many more of us that are not there and like kind of living vicariously through whether it's you or Laurie in commentary or friends and family that we have there as well. So we go to Kilmarnock and we win by 3 goals to nil, right? With the following lineup: Swallow in goal, McEntee, Halkett, Findlay, and Kingsley. Milne, Devlin, Beningame, and Kizaridis, Braga, and Shankland. The reason I bring this up is because after the eighth game last year, something I talked about earlier on in the show, when we lost 3-2 at Aberdeen, this was the lineup. Gordon in goal, Oyegoke, Kent, Rolls, and Kingsley. Grant, who was sent off, Boateng and Spittle, Vargas, Danda, and Shankland. Only two players started that game and also started at Rugby Park. What's the biggest difference 12 months on, Scott?
There's just a better blend to the squad. Even although it's in terms of squad depth, we probably still are a little bit top heavy in terms of numbers, but there's just a better blend and balance throughout the whole squad. There's that pace and athleticism in the wide areas that we didn't have last season. How many times did we say, even in the opening couple of months
Yeah.
last year, no right winger with pace,
Hmm.
no athleticism at right back, same problems in centre and midfield? Case in point, Malachi Boateng, decent player. I quite like Boateng, but he didn't offer us anything that we didn't already have there with Tate, Denham, Hoff, Devlin, and Benny. It was just recruitment for recruitment's sake and just adding in numbers. There was no real rhyme or reason to where we were going to play Yandanda. We decided to keep playing formations that wasn't ever going to really get the best out of them. It was just strange. The recruitment last summer just didn't make any sense at the time. And when you look back on it now and you revise over it, you just think, what were they
Makes
thinking of?
less
I
sense.
still
Yeah.
don't understand what Naismith's plan was with that team. I think for someone who talked a lot about how aggressive and attacking he wanted Hearts to be when he was campaigning for the job when he was interim manager, within 12 months, he really did fall into that trap of just wanting to control football games. And I felt with the likes of Spittle and Danda and Boateng and that, what he'd done was he signed players who, fair enough, they had knowledge of the league, so they ticked that box, but there was no pace in those free signings. They were decent, comfortable footballers who could retain possession. But in terms of really going for a football game and really being proper antagonists in a football game, those players aren't going to do that for you. And that's ultimately where a lot of our recruitment went wrong. What Lauren Shanklin needed was a runner next to him. Somebody with a bit of a brain that wanted to play on the shoulder of other players. He's now got that with Braga. And this is the thing, I would say, Shanklin's form at times since the start of the season, it's been a little bit hot and cold and it's been a bit patchy, but you know what? It can be now because he doesn't have to do all the heavy lifting. If he doesn't score one week, we've got other options there, whether it be Braga, Kizadidis, one of the centre halves, or somebody else
Yeah.
for a set play. We've got so many options now, and that's what we didn't have last year. And again, you don't want to have to oversell it too much because it's been and gone now, and we're now in a better place. But yeah, the recruitment last year, so scattergun, and it just pointed to a manager who just really did fall into that trap of just wanting possession and control of football games. And I think the problem was we weren't really good enough for that. There were
Hmm.
decent players. And then again, when teams hit us on the transition, we didn't have the pace or athleticism to deal with it either way, whether it was attacking teams or defending against teams that hit us on the counter either. So you can see the difference in that. Even guys like McAtee, who is having to play out of position, you can see that he's got the genetic makeup that makes him a good addition to this Hearts team because he's robust, he's athletic, he's decent in the air and he gets himself up and down the park. He's got a good engine on him as well. So even although he's having to play in right back just now, he's still bringing those traits to his game. And because he's getting assistance from people either in front of him or alongside him, the fact that he's playing out of position, it doesn't look as big an issue as it possibly could have been in previous teams or incarnations of the squad.
I think the importance of recruitment is kind of double underlined when you actually get some good recruitment, and it just shows how your previous recruitment was miles off it. And something else that Derek McInnes spoke to Cy Ferry about was how he works with Graham Jones and Jamestown Analytics, and they have a rating of every single player worldwide who's played 3,000 minutes or more in senior football. And when Derek arrived in the summer, he said they sat down, him and Graham Jones, assessed the squad, pinpointed the positions that required strengthening. And not only that, Scott, as we revealed before Jamestown Analytics were actually confirmed, there had already been, through Jamestown Analytics, a full scope of the Hearts squad as it was. Who was good, who wasn't good, who could get moved on, who wasn't going to add to what they needed to be, in which areas of the squad that they needed to strengthen. So to have a structure with your recruitment, look at Rangers right now. I mean, yeah, they appointed Danny Roll today, but it's a scattergun approach
Uh,
to both a managerial appointment and to a playing appointment. I mean, Chermiti's on 40,000 a week. Max
well, I was
Aaron's
going to
they're
say
paying
that.
they're paying 30,000 of his 100 grand salary. They're just throwing money after whatever with no
Yeah.
structure.
The best way of pointing out just how poor the Rangers strategy is just now, and you only have to come up with one example, is the fact that they go in and they sign Miovski. So they pay maybe 2.5, 3 million on Miovski. Everyone knows that the structure that Russell Martin wanted or preferred would just have one lone striker in that system. And he wasn't going to move away from that. So you're thinking, right, you've got a £3 million striker, internationalist, two really good seasons at Aberdeen. So you would probably profile him as the number one target that they had for that position. And then if they brought in anyone else, it would be someone who could compete with him,
Yeah.
but would probably be a backup option. With that in mind, and given the fact that they've only got one left back on the books, who's a 19-year-old who they have on loan for the season, where should that 8 million have went? Should it have went for another left back or maybe another right back given Max Aarons wasn't working out? Could it have went for another central midfielder in case they had to get rid of Raskan? No, they went and spent £8 million on a guy who's barely scored a senior goal. I mean, I'm
Barely
loving it.
played.
Look, I'm loving the fact that it's that
Great
much
for
of a
us.
basket case. But if you're a
Mm,
Rangers fan, you'd be tearing your hair out at that
not
sort
our
of
problem.
selection process. And no wonder Gerrard and Muscat have knocked those jobs back, which again, I'm disappointed Gerrard's knocked it back. I would have liked him to have got the job. I'm fucking delighted that Muscat's knocked it back because I think he would have actually, in time, not this season, because I think they've got too much work to do to come back this season, but in time, he would have sorted it out. Danny Rowe, 50-50 on him. I'm not
Could
quite
be
sure
anything.
where it'll go with him, but yeah, their strategy is so scattergun. And you can see that there's no joined up thinking going on there. And there's no cohesive unit. There's nobody's complementing each other. It's just a coalition. He just
A
incompetence.
coalition of chaos
Yeah, a
and
coalition of
incompetence.
incompetence and chaos, isn't it? It's just mental.
And we welcome the chase. I never thought I would say that from
Yes,
Rangers. We welcome the chase. We can sit here in our multi-million pound Tony Bloom mansion and say we welcome the chase. So I described Hearts so far this season. I mean,
or we welcome the chasing our Ferraris of the Honda Civics that are going to be chasing after us.
that comment from Brendan
There's a
Rodgers
way of
certainly
throwing
got.
your team under the bus, eh? Good old Brent.
Goodness me, sheesh, you can get some deal. I mean, Honda. Anyway, games this season. I described Hearts earlier. I love where we are. I still think we've got at least another couple of years to go. I think we've been solid without being spectacular. I think in bits of games, I thought in the second half against Kilmarnock, we controlled it. But I want to get from you, not too in depth, because we've got to get on to the Celtic game and some comments from Derek McInnes as well ahead of that. And I want to get from you. We've had plenty of people getting in touch with the excitement you've had ahead of certain games. What games were they going into matches at Tynecastle? That's all still to come. But of the 8 games so far, I need a grade from you. A through to E, whatever, plus, minus, anything you want, and just a sentence on how we kind of played in that game, good, bad, or indifferent. Let's start with the first game. I'm going to write these down. We're going to revisit them later on in the season. Hearts against Aberdeen. What's your grade, first of all?
B.
Okay, why?
It was a very good performance in terms of showing the intent of what Derek McInnes wanted from a Hearts team. So we pressed really well. We were really aggressive, in particular in that first 45 minutes. But then when it came to having to react to the changes Aberdeen made in the second half, McInnes made the right substitutions and we actually managed to see the game out quite comfortably. So although we weren't a great attacking threat that evening, I felt we were really robust, we were really aggressive, and we'd done the things from a pressing point of view that McInnes had highlighted when he took the job on. So I think that's why I would give it a B.
I'm going to give that an A minus, simply because it was the start we wanted. Now, if the Livy striker's brother, Yengi, had his boots on the right feet, might be in a different story, but he didn't. And he wasn't great, and he missed his chances. And we won it by 2-0, and it was pretty comfortable. It was just the start I wanted from a Derek McInnes side. It's the game that we really looked forward to kick off the new season after the League Cup group stage. And I thought we got pretty much everything that we were looking for. So an A minus for me. Dundee United 2, Hearts 3. Performance grade.
Another B because I felt that the two goals we lose are from individual errors rather than a structural problem. Now, to be fair, some people would maybe argue that and say that starting Alan Forrest out in a sort of wide right wing back position maybe wasn't the best idea. But the good thing is that McInnes again highlighted that changes needed to be made. We made those changes at half time, and to be fair, I thought we were by far the better team in that second half. And even although the two goals we got were from set plays, I felt that our performance in the second half merited that. Some people will say that we were a bit fortunate because we got Dundee United off the back of their European exploits, and that would maybe be valid. But a B because again, it was another example of the fitness that had been installed in the team. We went right to the death, and we
Yep.
got a last minute goal for our rewards.
Yeah, B for me as well, because of that was the first kind of sign that you're like, oh, these boys don't want to give up. They'll keep going and to play right until the death. And that was the first sign of 90 plus minute Hearts. So a B for me as well. This is the hardest one for me because if I'm allowed two grades, I'd give you two grades for Motherwell at home. But I'm going to be strict and I'm only allowing you one grade here. So it's not first hour, last half hour. It's overall. What are you giving me?
Yeah, I think overall you have to give that something like I would probably even go like a C minus, because we were poor for the majority of that game. To be fair, the third goal we get, it comes with a goalkeeper's mistake, so we did have to rely on the goalkeeper making a mistake as well. It's one of these things when you play against a team like Motherwell. In some respects, you only go 3-0 down to a team like that because of their philosophy. But in another respect, you only really get a chance to come back into the game because of said
Because of the
philosophy as
philosophy.
well.
Yep.
And you've seen that bite them in the arse at Parkhead a couple of weeks ago as
Hmm.
well. They're 2-1 up in that game. Their keepers keep making risks in the last 20 minutes of that match. So I think I would probably go a C for that or a C minus, because it was a poor display. It was a poor display from front to back. I think we commented on the time Wilson and Shankland. There wasn't that same sort of dynamic press from the front without Braga in the team. But again, it's a lesson that we've learnt since then. He's been in the side and not looked back. And again, you think a team spirit and coming back from behind. They've showed that in buckets again. But yeah, in terms of our performance, we were pretty fortunate that day to come away with something. Although, if the game had went on another 5 minutes, I would
We would
have
have won it,
probably
probably.
banked on us getting the winner rather than Motherwell.
Yeah. Just from a performance perspective, I'm giving it a D. I thought we were very, very poor. And then I'm giving it a D plus overall for the comeback, potentially going on to win it, but not. Again, it's that keep playing until the whistle. And there's something to be said, even when you're 3-0 down, for not thinking the game's done and chucking it. And we didn't. So that's the plus. So
And
D
and
plus.
and I felt that was a game where, because obviously the first sort of opening 3-4 games of the season, there was tinkering in terms
Yes.
of players starting and then making changes at half time as well. And I think a lot was made about Derek McInnes in terms of how he was handling the club on a Saturday, on a match day. But I think what the Motherwell and Dundee United games highlighted was that they'd worked on fitness, they'd worked on playing as a team unit, and that was something he probably didn't get enough credit for off the back of those fixtures. It was the negative of probably making too many changes, and there's one or two still playing that I wouldn't be playing. But to be fair to him, he'd clearly been working on other things on a Monday to Friday that probably should have been highlighted at the time, and that's probably why I'd give it as probably a C minus, because again it highlighted those positives.
Game four, Livingston 1 Hearts 2.
Yeah, I'd go for a C for that.
Okay.
First half we were really poor.
Mm.
And that was one of the games. That game more than any was the one where I felt like Derek McInnes had got it wrong in the first half. Starting with the five, I think Ryan touched on this with us either a day or two after the game where he talked about Livingston were anticipating that, so decided to sort of go 4-2-4 when they were taking goal kicks and playing long for the back and playing direct. And I feel like they had us pinned back that first half. They could have had a second goal as well. I remember them having a good chance just before half time.
Yeah.
Again, we made the positive change at half time. We bring in Kizaridis and we didn't look back. I felt we were easily the better team in the second half, albeit Livingston have a really good opportunity to draw us back again in the final minute through, I think it's McLennan that misses that header from the set play. But again, we went right to the end. You got the introduction of a Jew as well, so it was good to see him
Mm.
making a contribution. But yeah, I'd go for a C because the first half was really poor. And that was probably half time of the Livingston games, probably the most frustrated I've been that so far this season. Because I really felt that it got to a stage where I was like, Kizaridis needs to come in now. I understood it at the start of the season in terms of integrating them in a sort of game by game manner. But yeah, Livingston was where it was like, right, we've got to draw a line under the sand and we've got to get another option up there to support Shanklin and Braga.
I'm giving it a C plus. I gave Motherwell a D plus because of the first hour predominantly. This is a C plus because he's rectified his mistakes at the half and he admits he got it wrong and we turned it around. Was it great? No. Does it deserve a B? Probably not, but a C plus, I think that's probably fair. And we're not basing this on opposition players missing chances. That's on them. We've scored the chances that we need to score, and we got the job done. We got 3 points. So yeah, C plus for me. Ibrox, Rangers nil, Hearts 2.
A minus.
Okay.
There was a 10-15 minute spell. Joe Rothwell comes on around the 55th minute, and I think he he gets a foothold on the game.
You did.
And he gets injured at the 70th minute, and I don't think it's a coincidence that we regain control of the match for those last 20 minutes after he comes off. So I felt that 15-minute spell is probably what stops it from just being an outright A or A plus for me. Because apart from that, I thought we were really good that day. I thought in terms of how we pressed the game from the defence all the way up, I thought Braga was superb in the first half. Kizadidis was a good attacking option. McAtee was excellent at right back until he picked up that foot injury. It was just a really good team performance. And yeah, Shanklin does well, takes his first goal really well, manages to follow up with the penalty as well. So it was good to see him getting a couple of league goals as well and getting back into the swing of it. Yeah, A minus. Just that 15-minute spell in the second half where we were maybe just inviting them on a little bit too much, and better Rangers teams would have punished us for that.
Hmm.
And we, to be fair, we maybe got a little bit fortunate with the goal that got disallowed. I didn't see too
Maybe.
much contact on Soloff, so yeah.
Ew.
I think you've probably got to take that into consideration as well. But it was as good an away performance as I've seen from a Hearts team, Ibrox, generally
I
speaking.
just, I just wanted bravery. I wanted belief. I wanted Hearts fans there to experience a victory because I don't know what percentage of fans that were at that game had never seen Hearts win at Ibrox before. I think you'd said you'd only seen them win once. Is that
I
right?
think three times was
Or three
maybe,
times?
was it
Okay.
three and one of them was against Falkirk? No, four. And one of them was against Falkirk.
So it's rare. Yeah, there you go. That was the Scottish Cup semi-final. So yeah, so it's rare. I'm A minus as well for you. I'm a little bit concerned at the start of the second half, that 15-minute period. I'm not here to give marks to the officiating and their decisions. All I will say is you and I and everyone listening will have sat through many Hearts against Rangers or Celtic games and felt hard done by many decisions over the years. So it was nice just to be on the right end of some for a change. So A minus for me as well. Belief going to Ibrox and then getting a result as well. Three more to go. Hearts 3, Falkirk nil.
B plus.
Okay.
It was a very efficient performance. I think that game, again, it was one of those fixtures that probably highlights the deficiencies we've got from the fullback areas. I think there's times where we could be getting the ball out to our two wider options a bit quicker, but due to McAtee's inexperience in that position, and I feel like Kingsley has still got a tendency. I don't know whether it's his game. I don't know whether it's being part of a Hearts team that have played this way for a number of years. But when he receives the ball on his left foot, I feel like far too often he doesn't open his body up to look to play the ball down the line. Now, again, that could just be almost like a muscle memory because under Naismith and Critchley and that, it was about keeping the ball and keeping possession. And he's
Hmm.
maybe still in that mind frame. But I would say the Falkirk game was one of those games where I just thought, get the ball out there just a little bit quicker, a bit more direct. You don't always have to go through the two midfielders. You can get it down the line, especially given how much space Falkirk can give you at times as well. That being said, still an efficient performance, scored some really good goals.
Yeah.
And because we went 3-0 up so early, we were able to make some good substitutions and gives people some time off the park to sort of try and keep them fresh for the Derby game as well.
I've given it a B. I'd give it the first 48 minutes when we went 3-0 up an A. And then the rest of it, as you say, and it's not through our fault, we're 3-0 up. The game's won. I would have, just greedy wise, I would have loved to have seen us put the foot down. I think Derek McKinnon said that afterwards as well. If there was a downside, he felt that there were more goals in the game, but we didn't. So an A for the first 48 minutes, a C for the rest. That balances out as a B for that one. Hearts 1, Hibs nil. Reminder, we're talking performance, not result.
I would go B minus. So it was a very good defensive performance. So having Milne and Kizadidis playing very high and wide meant that we pinned Hibs back into pretty much a back five. So we really neutralised any threat that they could offer us down the sides, which, to be fair, if you think back to the fixtures last season, they were capable of doing. If you think back to that second half and the 2-1 game, remember, Gerard Taylor was struggling going up
Yes.
against Cadden, and everyone could see it apart from Neil Critchley that day. And it was happening the whole of the second half. There was nothing like that happening against Hibs in that fixture because of the way that we set the team out. Now, there's reasons why there's a B minus. Again, we struggled in those wide areas, partly down to what Hibs were doing in terms of Campbell and Mulligan quickly coming over to shut down any space that McAtee and Kingsley had. But again, I still felt there was opportunities for McAtee and Kingsley to do a little bit better in possession, and that's something we need to work on. Naturally, with McAtee, we need to probably get another right back in January. I think it's going to be something that's going to probably get looked at, but it was a good defensive performance. And then in the last 5, 10 minutes, we made an effort to try and win the game. Even although we didn't create too many chances, we brought in Kabangu. Kabangu has a role to play in the lead up to the goal. Kurjota gets the assist. And then you see that mindset of the players when Kurjota's first ball gets cleared, they're still in that box. They're not coming all the way back to try and neutralise what Hibs are looking to do. Hibs are playing for the point by that stage of the game. So again, we get our rewards for going to the last minute.
I found this hard to grade. I've given them a C. I didn't think we were good that day. Didn't think we were bad. I just thought we were all right. On the back
We
of the
missed a
first
ball
half,
carrier from midfield that day.
we
That
did.
was one of those
We
games where
we
you
did.
really you
Hmm.
would have liked to have seen somebody that could have drove us on because we struggled in possession. You really want someone to take a bit of responsibility on the ball and maybe carry it 5, 10 yards and
Yep.
link with the forward players that way instead of try to play. So that was again another game that highlighted that the balance isn't always there with the midfield, with the pairing that we've got. Not for all fixtures, but in certain fixtures, certain circumstances.
Mm. The reason I'm doing this is we're 5 points. I mean, it's strike while the iron's hot. We're 5 points clear at the top of the table, and as I say, I think we've still got a couple of gears to go. And the reason I'm giving a C in this game, before I came through to do the live hit on Chelsea, whoever it was, and missed the goal, it was about 85 minutes on the watch. I was thinking, what are we going to talk about on the show? You, me, and whoever else was. It was Barry
Barry.
Anderson, Barry on the show. What's going to be the narrative here? Because Hearts weren't great that day, and obviously all the narrative. It's like as Barry was saying, the rewrite that takes place. Everything just goes out the window. It's start all over again, and it's a totally different story. And the mood of Hearts fans is changed from, geez, another game against them and haven't beaten them to suddenly, who cares? It's the best weekend ever because we've got a result. Did we deserve it? Probably not, but who cares? And I'm glad you mentioned the last 10 minutes or so because there was only one team that kind of wanted to win it and the subs, but I still didn't think that did enough from a performance. But results A plus. Performance for me is a C in that one because we didn't kick on from that first half against Falkirk the way I would have liked. So that's the second, well, the third time we've kind of got a different grade slightly. The Aberdeen game, the Motherwell game, and now the Hearts Hibs. Final game is Kilmarnock against Hearts at the weekend. What's your grade?
B plus.
Okay, why?
Uh, Game went how I thought we would, so we set up the right way to make sure that we gave Kilmarnock enough respect without giving them too much respect. So we made sure that we were competitive in that opening 15 minutes when they were probably on top. To be fair, in terms of territory and possession, they were probably slightly the better side until we get the opening goal. Once we get the opening goal, we get a better foothold in the game without being overly dangerous, bar that chance for Devlin in the last minute. But again, I felt that there was a confidence amongst McInnes and the team that they knew that once the game would get stretched, we had the players that could then punish Kilmarnock. And when they gave us those two opportunities, the decision making and the quality of our forward players sort of shone through. So I would give that a B plus because it certainly wasn't some Kilmarnock fans would maybe argue that 3-0 is potentially a flattering scoreline for Hearts, given the number of chances or clear-cut chances we created. But again, the intent of the press is what's creating those chances for us. So I feel like from that standpoint, that's why the performance gets graded slightly higher for me, because it's not always about the quality you show on the ball. It's how good we've been off the ball this season. And that has been one of the main attributes as to why we're top of the league just now, undefeated.
I've gone a little bit better than that. I've gone A minus for that one. I just think game management, especially in the second half, and the press and the protection. And I said it earlier, I never felt uncomfortable after we took that one goal lead through Craig Halkett in the
I would have
19th
liked to
minute.
have seen Kabori getting 20 minutes on Saturday. I
Yeah,
won't lie to
maybe.
you. There's a little bit where it's like they started warming up Alan Forrest when we get the third goal, and I still sometimes think, is Derek McInnes still trying to temper our expectations? Anytime Hearts fans sing "We Shall Not Be Moved," Alan Forrest starts to get unstripped or starts warming up somewhere. So yeah, I think a lot of us were getting greedy by that stage, and I think that was one of those things where I was like, oh, I'd quite like to, because Devlin had been on a booking as well and had taken one or two knocks. I was like, maybe get Magnus in 15, 20 minutes, maybe give Kabori 20 minutes. But again, look, like you say, game management was really good. But
Yeah.
yeah, if you're going to be greedy, there was a couple of players that I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of when we went 3-0 up.
You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. It's the welcome return of the Scarves Around the Funnel banker, who's on loan from Deal or No Deal. After last week's offer of 5 points from 3 games, Kilmarnock away, Celtic at home, St Mirren away, was unceremoniously rejected by not only Scott McIntosh, but also by 74% of the 559 votes received on the Twitter poll. The banker is back with a new offer. Are you ready, Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
The Scarves Around the Funnel banker this week wishes to offer you, from these next 2 games at home to Celtic and away to St Mirren, 4 points. Do you wish to accept or reject the offer?
Reject.
Because
Because although we should not dismiss that Celtic still have some good individual talent in their ranks, I think where we are just now in terms of the mindset of the team, we should be going into this fixture looking for 3 points, as we should against a St Mirren team who are going to have one eye on their cup semi-final a few days later as well. So I think this is 2 fixtures we should still be going out to try and win.
if the banker didn't tweak the offer but made it more concise, and that the 3 points would be against Celtic and the 1 point would be against St Mirren, would that sway you?
No.
Interesting. Okay. Mentioned Derek McInnes' comments when speaking to Cy Ferry in Open Goal this week. I just wanted to bring up this quote. You can't play for Hearts or manage Hearts unless you're prepared to play or manage with a bit of risk. I love that from Derek McInnes. And that was in response to Cy Ferry asking Derek what he'd seen of Hearts before taking over that he knew he had to work on and change. And he continued, the risk comes from being prepared to take the ball all the time. Try and make sure we're prepared to play bigger passes and not be scared of giving the ball away. Hearts were too safe. Everything was too sanitized. They'd play the easier pass when we needed to make a more penetrative pass, and we needed to get the ball into strikers quicker. Hearts fans want to see their team imposing themselves on the opposition, being bullish, playing forward, and being confident. You can't play for Hearts unless you're confident, and you've got to go onto that pitch feeling confident, not being a wee bit unsure. If I play that pass, then the booing machine might come on. You know what? If it does, then it does. You deal with it. You play the right pass, not the safe pass. I hate it when you've got the chance to be positive and players take the easy pass. Love that quote. Hearts against Celtic this weekend, Sunday, noon. Jesus, 7 a.m. East Coast of America, 4 a.m. west coast of the United States. Last four meetings at Tynecastle. 23rd of November last year, Celtic win 4-1. Drama for Hearts, Kyogo, Kuhn, and two from Ida. Game before that, 3rd of March 2024, George Grant's penalty in the 43rd. Lawrence Shanklin second after 56, 2-0 win for Hearts. Game before that, another 4-1 Celtic, and Kyogo and O scoring in a 2-0 win in May 2023. What are we expecting from Sunday?
Well, this is an interesting thing. I sort of alluded to it a little bit at the start of the episode about Celtic. I think Celtic are on the cusp of probably making changes. I think it's getting to a stage in terms of there's been obviously a lot of focus and a huge spotlight on the Celtic board, given how the summer transfer activity was handled. But I think the further removed that becomes, and the more and more it becomes about individual performances against teams in the same league, I think the spotlight is now going to fall heavier on Brendan Rodgers and the team, and you could see that yesterday. And I think when that starts to happen, that's when managers will maybe start to want to maybe tweak things in terms of the system and the formation, because he doesn't have a lot he can do in terms of the personnel. He's still missing Alistair Johnson, who I think's now back training, but I don't think he'll be ready for this weekend. And he's a huge reason for Celtic doing well down that right flank, and he's a huge miss for them. Maeda's still got a hamstring complaint that left him out yesterday as well. So you're missing Maeda, and even although he hasn't played well this season, he's still one of their better players. So just now, it's really hard to say where the Celtic threat comes from. There's been a lot made of Tynecastle in terms of his individual ability, in terms of taking men on and being quite confident, but he's not actually providing any assists or goals yet. There's no end product to his game at this stage. And one of the things that was highlighted about his performance yesterday is that he's got no like sort of interest at all in going back and helping his fullback, which at this stage is a Kieran Tierney that's struggling to see out
Yeah.
90 minutes just now. So you can pinpoint a lot of issues and potential weaknesses that we can exploit amongst that Celtic squad. Now they still have things that we need to be wary of. They've still got that mindset of winning games and doing so fairly consistently, although I think somebody said they failed to win in nearly 50% of their games since they got beat off of Bayern towards the start of the year. So they
Wow.
failed to win nearly half of their games since that fixture. Now, again, some of them would have been dead rubber league games and stuff like that. So
Sure.
you've got to take that into consideration. But the thing that everyone was hanging their hat on Celtic at the start of the season when they were struggling for goals was that they weren't losing any. So at
Hmm.
the first 4 or 5 games, even in the domestic campaign, even although people were saying, well, they didn't score it against Rangers, they barely looked like threatening Rangers. A lot of people were saying, but yeah, they're keeping clean sheets all the time. Although they're maybe like scoring one or two, they're keeping clean sheets. They've now lost 6 goals in their last 3 games. They could have lost more in the first half yesterday in terms of Dundee hitting them on the break. They lost 2 at home to Braga, and then they lost 2 against Motherwell. And again, in that fixture, they could have lost 1 or 2 more as well. So there's all these weak spots. I think it's a mentality thing for Hearts. If we go in there and make sure that we play against them and give them that, I think you do have to give them respect. I don't think you can go in there and say, well, because they're not playing well, we'll just steamroll over them. I think you've still got to give them the respect to being the champions and having plenty of international players in their squad. But I think if we go in there with the right mindset without being scared of them, I don't see why we can't get the win in this game.
There's nothing to fear.
No.
That's the way that we should be now approaching every single game.
You can now squeeze the
Mentality.
game on Celtic because any actually
Yeah.
wants to come short all the time
Yep.
anyway. They don't have that explosive pace. There used to be that time, I remember there was 1 or 2 times where we played against Celtic where we did try and press high, and then there would just be this little ball that they would play just between Cochrane and the left centre half. And you knew that Kyogo or Maeda would be on it in a
Yeah.
flash. They don't have those options now. So you can actually start to squeeze the game on them, and their midfield are way off it, especially
Yeah.
running back the way it's. There's so much of me that thinks don't change a winning team, especially a team that's won 4 games on the bounce and kept 4 clean sheets. But there is a bit of me that thinks, do we put a third option in midfield and just make sure that we win that battle? Because I think if you've got somebody making runs from the centre of the park, they don't have a midfielder that wants to turn back and run back towards his own goal. They don't have
It's an
that.
interesting one. It's an interesting one. I think
I
he
can
picks the
understand
same
why
team.
people would not want to make any changes to
Correct.
the team, but I get he's only just back in training and he hasn't played for the club at home yet. But there's a bit of me that thinks Adu in that slightly more advanced central midfield role would have a field day against this current Celtic team.
And there's the thing, right? Are you going to get more from
But then you're
an
exploiting space in the fight in the wide areas to
exactly?
Celtic, so it's
Are you getting more from a 60-minute appearance from the start from Aju or a 30-minute
yeah,
appearance off the bench? And for me, it would be off the bench with the same 11 and then see how we are. Maybe a tighter leash, maybe a change at half time if things aren't going well. But I think you put yourself up for unnecessary criticism if you make changes to something that's worked over the last four games, and you know you've got that option. You've got legs on the bench. You've got Aju as well. So there is that. I think Celtic as well are susceptible from set plays.
yeah.
Dundee certainly tried to exploit that a couple of
That was a
times, even
very
though
standard move for Dundee.
totally,
There was nothing.
totally,
That wasn't from a set piece coach. That was just an
yeah,
old-fashioned. You make
right.
sure you block the marker, and
Hmm.
it didn't take much. And Carter Vickers is another one. He's obviously been a really good
He's not
servant to
playing well.
Celtic, but his body is breaking down. He's really
No.
struggling now. And Liam Scales, because they pressed Kieran Tierney so high, Liam Scales was constantly getting pulled out into a wide position yesterday. So there's opportunity there on the transition. It doesn't have to be a case of being consistently in control of the game. I think in the transition we can really hurt Celtic in the same way that we did Killie in the
Yeah.
second half yesterday.
I think there now needs to be a change in mentality from Hearts supporters, and I've started to see that from Hearts players, from Hearts coaching staff. Instead of can't, can. Instead of don't, do. Instead of won't, will. On and on and on. Just that was in the past. Third place, glass ceiling, maybe win a cup. This is different. If we don't believe that we belong, then it doesn't matter what's going to happen. We're not going to win the games that we should be winning. And from a Hearts fans perspective, I love it that the majority of Hearts fans, there'll be those that still have that, whether it's a generational thing or having been slapped in the face enough times over the past goodness knows how many decades, that'll kind of still go with trepidation. But if we're asking the players to go and believe, then the fans should do likewise as well. And if we can emit that
What I would say
atmosphere,
to those
then we've
fans,
got a chance.
and I get that because there's all that historical data and memories that can quite, you can say with certainty there will be Hearts fans that'll go, I've had these scars before. I know
Of
it's
course,
like to play
totally
against
understand
Celtic.
that.
But Celtic haven't played against this Hearts team. Celtic haven't played against the Derek McInnes Hearts team.
Hearts
And
haven't played
sometimes you've
against
just
this
got to look
Celtic
at it from
side
that
as well.
standpoint and say, doesn't matter what's happened before, doesn't matter what Celtic have done to us before, they haven't played against this Hearts team. And we haven't played this Celtic team. And this is
That's
a
the thing.
very different Celtic team to even 6, 9 months ago. And I
Totally.
think that's the mindset fans need to go in with.
We've gone to games thinking if we can keep this to two, we're doing all right. Hoydonk, Cadet, Sutton, Larson, and then you've got all the guys like Kyogo of late that couldn't stop scoring against Hearts. This is different. I don't fear Celtic, and I don't think Hearts do either. And I'm excited to watch from afar. And I'll happily set that alarm. And I'll be like the Hearts supporters at Rugby Park. I'm going to set it for like 27 minutes past 6 o'clock so I can get a half hour build up for this game because this is massive. So we asked before we came on air, ahead of the game against Celtic, what game at Tynecastle have you looked forward to the most? Martin Geisler, the wonderful Martin Geisler, got in touch. Bayern Munich at home, February 28th, 1989, my 18th birthday. I can remember how excited I was to be filled with legally purchased alcohol for the first time as we walked to the ground. Aberdeen was the example that we gave, the Paul Hartley penalty that got us into the Champions League qualifier. Um, Craig Gordon, Hearts 4, Hibs nil. Firework Phil's first derby and maybe first home game of the 05-06 season. There was talk about that Rangers game as well being something that was eagerly awaited. I remember that one From Callum Toshney and from Ian Lenny in in Pennycook, they say the worst one from Callum was probably the derby at the start of 0708. First game of the season, Derby, evening kickoff live on TV, middle of the festival, thinking we'd pump them, and then
Sunday night as
inevitably we
well.
got beaten a shitty game. Lenny says Burley's team against Rangers, knowing we were going to win in that one, was hyped for the Celtic game, and then the Fisas red card kind of put paid to that one. Callum's point was there's not many of them that they've actually looked forward to going into the game that have had a happy ending. What about the COVID return game? Probably the best one. We managed to get tickets and beating that lot, Celtic made it awesome. Good that we were actually able to sit next to each other. Callum and Ian had the boys there, and pretty special to get back to it. We've got plenty more on social media. I'll read to in just a second. What ones do you have as I rescue the AirPod that's come flying out my ear so I can't hear you to start with?
Yeah, I think for me, the majority of them probably come from because you're having to think back to times where you're excited pre the game and not just trying to think, well, of course it worked out well, so I must have been happy prior to the match. Any game for the sort of early to mid 90s, midweek games. There was a derby, January derby in 94. So this would have been the last derby I think we played at Tynecastle in terms of the 22 in a row when we got a 1-1 draw with John Miller. Again, you're a school kid, you're getting to go to the game midweek. The smell of the brewery is overpowering at times in the midweek night games. So you've got that atmosphere, floodlight game. Those were the types of games I always looked forward to. That and the European games in the 90s. So Atletico Madrid, Standard Liège,
Yeah, wow.
Slavia Prague, Red Star Belgrade, all those types of matches, you were always looking forward to seeing how the team would get on because it was always quite close to the start of the season as well. So
Hmm.
you'd maybe have some new players in that to watch as well. So those are the games I would say I would always be really excited about. I think the good example that somebody brought up earlier was probably the 4-0 against Hibs under Burley. Because there'd been the Kilmarnock away game, there was already anticipation because we'd now seen Scatchel a couple of times, we'd seen Bednar. But unfortunately, I remember being in the pub pre-match and Jankowskis had an injury. So we had to start Callum Elliott, who hadn't started a
Oh,
game for
yeah.
Hearts before that
Mm.
time. And although we'd signed Fisas, we didn't get him registered in time. So Jamie McAllister started it. So I do feel that I probably wasn't as confident after the team came out. So yeah, I'll probably go back to those games in the 90s. Just you were always buzzing to go to any football game at that age, but
Sure.
definitely the midweek games over the winter period where it was floodlit. Those were the ones you really enjoyed.
Yeah, those European games, a lot of them at the start of the season, it was still kind of light a lot of the time, especially if they were in August and September to a certain extent. Alan Preston says the Bayern Munich game as well, that wasn't light. I mean, that was dark at 5 o'clock because that was at the end of February. I mean, Martin Geisler was mentioning it. It was his 18th birthday. I remember being at school that day and just wanting the bell to go so I could get to Tynecastle that night. A little bit of love for those on Blue Sky. Laurie always mentioned this, and I hoped I'd never had to say the name, but it's just always good content. But pants shat on. Ooh. Um, the buzz around Gorgie for our first foray into the Conference League group stages was amazing. It was quickly quelled by what we actually did in most of those games. It's a good point. It's group stage European football, knowing it's more games still to come, regardless of the result. But you're just hoping you get that. Honestly, that and this was the first Conference League group stage game when we actually felt we had something. Was there an excitement from you ahead of that?
Not so much.
No.
I think you had some of the earlier kickoffs in that as well, so the
Oh, the
atmosphere was diluted
5:45s. Yeah.
because of the 5:35 kickoffs. Everyone was rushing to try and get into the ground in that. So yeah, there wasn't really that pre-match build-up. And again, I wouldn't say that was a team that I would say I really got particularly like excited to go and see. It wasn't a team that really put on those types of performances where I think, God, I'm really going to get something in terms of excitement. That's one of the things I like about this current team. It's not all about playing football in a particular style that's pleasing on the
Hmm.
eye, but I think we go out there and try and create as many chances as we can. and we try and put match winners into the team. And I think more of that will happen. I think once we sign Chesnikov, once we get a Jew fully fit, there's going to be more match winners in this team. And I think you're right in what you're saying. There is still another couple of years to come from this team, which is really pleasing.
I know I've said over the past few weeks that we're trying to keep this to an hour, but it's very rare. We're 5 points clear at the top of the league. So I want to get to everyone who has got in touch with us about games that they were excited to attend, regardless of what happened with the actual game. Thankfully, the majority of them are victories. Jamie Devlin's an interesting one. Given how poor our record tends to be against Celtic, genuinely cannot remember why, but I was so confident going into the game against Celtic when we won 4-0. I wasn't 4-0 confident, but I knew we would do it that day. Having seen the lineup that day, Jamie, I think you were probably the only one that was confident that
I'd
Hearts
like to
would
know
beat
which
Celtic.
pub he found that
Unbelievable.
was early licensed that
Goodness.
Sunday morning, because he would have had to
Sheesh.
have been somewhere and had a few drinks. There was
Wow.
not a chance in hell I was confident going into that game.
No, but and then you saw the lineup, you're just like, oh goodness. Matt Leslie, another for Bayern in 1989. Stephen, couldn't wait for us to smash Rangers when Pospisil, was it Pospisil or Bednar, sorry, scored that goal. After all the shouts that they were going to burst our bubble. Sunday has the exact same vibes. A lot of talk saying, Hearts haven't done anything yet. Wait till they play the big sides. Celtic coming to Gorgie. Stephen says it's got the same vibes as when Hearts beat Rangers at the start of 05. 06. Jersey Steve versus Hibs, 1st of January 2011. We were on a great run and they were rotten. Felt like it was going to be a demolition derby. It wasn't to be that, but the celebrations for Kevin Kyle's late winner were unmatched, unlike Halkett's until Halkett's the other week. Incidentally, the last time we had a New Year's Day derby. Wow, 2011.
I
I remember waking up, setting an alarm. I'd been out because obviously what was the kickoff? It was a 12 o'clock kickoff, I think. That one I had about 2 hours sleep for the Hibs game. Steve Weddle, Rangers at home in December 1988. We'd just beaten Velez Mostar in the midweek to qualify for the UEFA Cup quarter final. And not only had Robbo been re signed for Newcastle, but Tosh McKinley had also arrived. And interestingly enough, Ian Mercer, December 1988, Robbo's first match at Tynecastle after returning from Rangers, beat Rangers 2 goals to none. Remember that? That was fantastic. William Clark, like any Hearts fan, I always look forward to the Edinburgh Derby, but I'm buzzing for the weekend because Celtic are there for the taking. Ian Gordon, Rangers, January 2020, had a right good feeling about signing Boyce. Knew we'd beat them, and those 3 points would propel us up the table. Jamie Wright, Paul Hartley's Hampden hat-trick, the 4-0 game. Woke up buzzing that morning, just knew we would batter them that day in the semi-final. A little bit of license for Jamie there. It was the best Tynecastle match you were looking forward to, but certainly any opportunity to talk about a thumping of Hibernian at Hampden. Der Kaiser, if it's a game that I was looking forward to, then the Aberdeen one is probably the game. Anticipation, as you say, Scott, for European games has always been high, but securing second was very special. And he also says first home derby after the cup final demolition was another, just for the banter, obviously. What do you remember about that day?
That's about the only thing, because it was a 0-0 game.
Sounds
That
right.
was that. To be fair, there was that great challenge that Ryan Stevenson had on James McPake that evening, where he went in both feet in. I mean, in the days of VAR, that would definitely get pulled up for a red. Just remember James McPake showing his shin pad to the referee, whinging about the tackle. That was about the only thing he note for that game. It was quite a turgid match. You had a John McGlynn Hearts team against a Pat Fenlon Hibs team. Football was not the victor that evening.
That's like Joe Jordan against Alec Miller. You kind of knew it
Aye.
wasn't going to be pretty. Joel Sked, I wouldn't say most look forward to, but was very excited about the first game under Csaba Laszlo. Home to Motherwell, first time in 12 months plus, there was an actual manager leading the team, remonstrating with Hugh Michaela after full time on the pitch always amuses me. Skim Coat. August 1974. I was a tiny wee kid. My dad decided it was time for my first game. I was petrified of the turnstile, so he tried to lift me over it. He got his name taken by a policeman. I remember coming home with a commemorative coffee mug. That would have been the centenary season. Yeah, it was the Hearts centenary game. Did we not play Spurs in the centenary game? Can't remember anything else apart from the turnstile and the mug. It's just little things that you remember that probably nobody else does. Fantastic. And final one from Flitch. I remember a Scottish. Oh yes, a good one. I remember a Scottish Cup tie against Celtic in 1987. Packed crowd, late kickoff as the rugby was on at Murrayfield. Robbo scored a 25-yard free kick. Great celebrations. I remember not like it was yesterday, but that's one of those that it'll be best games against Celtic, for example, and that one with Robbo's free kick. The Bayern game, we had to move the ball slightly according to the referee. Do I recall in that Celtic game that either the ball wasn't positioned right or the wall wasn't positioned right? Packy Bonner hadn't got the wall right, and
He
there
hadn't got
was
the wall right, but it hits off one of the Celtic players' shoulders, doesn't
does
it? It does
it
have a
does
deflection, and
yeah.
so he
So
loops
that
in for there.
there was that one. Brilliant memories. Thank you to everyone who got in touch for that one. Bit longer than we expected. Apologies for that. Hope you've enjoyed it. You beat Kilmarnock 3-0 and you're 5 points clear at the top of the table. You don't want to kind
We're not
of
doing
race
predictions.
through it. Yes, we will be doing that. And you're going to start. It's Hearts Celtic. It's Sunday. It's 12 o'clock. It's Tynecastle. And how's it going to finish, Scott
We're going to win
McIntosh?
3-1.
Scorer?
Shankland's going to get at least one.
Oof, love that. I don't know why. Sometimes you just get a score in your head and there's no rhyme, no reason. I think Hearts win this by 2-0. And it ends up being relatively comfortable. And given Celtic's propensity to not be great at defending set plays, I'm cheering on Joel Sked's preseason prediction of Craig Halkett to get at least 10 goals. And he's on form right now. He's flying. So I think Craig Halkett will be among the goal scorers as Hearts beat Celtic by 2-0. Hoping to have Gary Mackay on the show next week. He's on holiday right now, but he's keen to come on. Obviously, no matter what happens at Tynecastle on Sunday, Hearts will still be top of the table. So it'll be nice to get the take of a PHM, a proper Hearts man, who was also part of the squad in 85-86 and knows the type of pressure that's associated with being chased rather than chasing in the Premier League. So hopefully we'll hear from Gary as a guest on the show next week with Scott and myself. My thanks to Scott. We will do this all again in 6 or 7 days' time. Good luck to Hearts this Sunday against Celtic at Tynecastle. And a reminder as well, we're on social media, on Instagram, Scarves Around the Funnel, on YouTube. You'll always get the opportunity to watch this first before you can listen to it on the audio version. And you can get us podcast at scarvesaroundthefunnel.co.uk. Bye for now.